Hello.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm having to adjust some volume.
Am I coming across louder than normal?
No. I don't know. I don't know why, but I feel like I've had to change everything. But I also updated to Sequoia, and so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But
I have not done that yet.
well, I will tell you one thing that is pleasing to me.
Okay.
They finally fixed the audio waveform in FaceTime. It's this. It's got the same audio waveform. What's the UI? I guess it's Is it UI? Yeah, I guess it's UI. Same UI as the as iOS. So you know how there's in iOS if you look at the dynamic island, you have orange for your audio and green for the person you're speaking to's audio.
Yes.
That's what's on FaceTime now.
Nice. I had thought about updating, but decided I would wait until after today.
I did. I had the exact same thought, and I did it anyway.
I mean, I can't blame you. I've done it before.
I was like, today. I mean, and at the time that I did it, I had if something happened, I had time to troubleshoot, and I legitimately had time to roll it back if I had to.
I updated all of my other devices, but
yep, I did. So I did my phone and watch yesterday. I did one Apple TV and my computer today, and that'll be all of my personal devices.
It sounded like you were about to ask a question.
I was, and I'm trying to remember what the question was.
Was it going to go along with what I changed?
Oh yes, that's what it was. What did you change?
I picked up a Rode. It's a Rodecaster that is basically a mixer audio interface unit all in one. Two different reasons. One, I had a chance to pick it up less than full price. And two, I had been debating comparing doing some other audio stuff in general and just wasn't really sure what that might entail. And so when I came across getting it, I decided I would go ahead and try it. There are things that I like for sure. Like one of the things that is kind of nice because it has its own power, I can have the speakers plugged up, and then if I want to use like the synthesizer or something, I don't have to plug it up to the laptop to get power to the audio interface for the speakers to work. And I also like that as soon as you unmute a mic interface, it mutes the reference monitors so that audio only goes through the headphones to eliminate any chance for feedback. So just from basic my use cases now, it makes a pretty nice difference. And then the quality of the preamps and all are better in theory. I don't know for sure that I could tell a difference at this point. But the other thing that I gained is on the mixer itself, or on the unit itself, I can do some manipulation of the audio. Like right now, I've got a noise gate running on the mixer before it even hits audio hijack and the denoise options there. So in theory, I overall will have cleaner audio in an untreated room than I would have otherwise. Nice. Even though, again, I'm probably not going to notice it just because I wasn't really noticing anything anyway with how I had it set up. So just some extra functionality that I thought would be neat to play with and see how to kind of what it might help do.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Other added benefit is because it has its own power source and it has a micro SD card, I could theoretically take it and plug up 4 mics and physically record something without any other equipment. Granted, I've got a Zoom recorder for that kind of stuff as well with the video stuff, so I don't know that I would do that unless I was specifically trying to record an in-person podcast with multiple people, but still, it's nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah, for sure. So I put in a topic idea.
I saw. I still have not seen the movie.
I was thinking it was like a newer movie than it is, but it's just because it just came on. It's just now on Netflix, but it came out 5 months ago. It came out in April.
Yeah, I remember seeing discussion about it. I wouldn't say anything overly specific, just people talking about it in a sense of, I don't even remember honestly at the time. It seems like it was the people you would expect complaining about that type of movie in the current political climate at the time.
Interesting.
And I don't know enough about the premise for sure, but I'm willing to roll with it anyway.
Well, I think you'd very much like this movie for a couple of reasons. I think it's, without giving away any spoilers, I think it's really interesting what the writer-director did. Did I say what movie? Did we say what movie we're discussing at all? I'm sorry.
I don't actually know.
Okay, so the movie that I put in our notes was Civil War, and that is that movie came out. I think it was April of 2024. I think is it the production company or trying to think of film distribution company. I don't know. Anyway, A24 was the I guess distributor, and I think it was their second highest grossing film. It's their first quote unquote action film, and I've got to say so it's a war movie. It's oh yeah, I remember. This was good. It came out on April 13th, which was 163 years after the actual American Civil War started. Same day. They did that on purpose, I suppose.
If not, it was a missed opportunity. Well, not a missed opportunity. It was a happy coincidence.
Yeah.
However you want to phrase that.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing it was coincidental. So, anyway, it takes place in the near dystopian future. I think it's it's whenever I see movies like this, and it's like and people are like, oh, could this it's like watching it. It feels like it's like this is not that far from reality. It wouldn't be. It doesn't take a lot of suspension of disbelief to be like, this could happen. It's that kind of. It was that well done. But the reason I thought, I was watching it, I was like, I think that you would really like it is that the two main characters are photojournalists, and it follows them, and they do a really good job of following these photojournalists that are embedding themselves in with military groups to document the war. And it was really interesting because basically there's no all of the politics is sort of obfuscated by various means in the movie. Like there's no political statements by the president of the United States, but it's pretty clear that he's incredibly corrupt. And there's no parties, there's nothing, no affiliation, no political leaning. The Civil War is with California and Texas. So the writer, I was reading about this, and the writer picked California and Texas because it's like these are two states where it's like they're clearly, depending on what cities you're looking at, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. So of the political spectrum. So I thought it was interesting.
It's also not a far stretch to think Texas would be involved in the Civil War.
I know they're real interested in. I don't know. Anyway,
I mean, in fairness, just to not name call just one state, it's also not surprising for anywhere in the Southeast to be involved in a civil war, except maybe Florida.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm watching and I'm like, all the people that I think that if they won a civil war or maybe romanticize it in their minds, it's like I don't think they would do well. Like I think in general Americans would not do well with this. I think the only people that are anywhere near capable would be a few folks, and people that are already currently in the military.
So that's an interesting thought process, because I've thought things similar many times, but it leads into or bleeds into multiple other possible things. So there's very much a contingent of people in the Southeast in general who think they are more than capable of dealing with conflict if it were to come down to some sort of internal conflict like a civil war, mostly because of the culture of growing up with firearms and action movies. And I would 100% agree that the vast majority of those individuals would not do well. It, I would I would say that there's still a significantly sized sub-contingent of that group that probably would do fairly well, or at least would, on the surface, appear to, because of their draw to militia groups or things that like to stylize themselves after the military. Not saying they would be effective, just saying that they would potentially do relatively well at holding their own for the average person, right? Like against an actual organized military force, they would crumble. But talking about just general civilian engagement, I guess, for lack of better phrasing, when you're talking about a civil war, I think they would at least do decently until a more organized group came along.
Yeah, I think that I was going to say, if anyone, my thought as you were saying that, if anyone is going to be successful, would likely come out of that type of, or folks that have done that sort of preparation. But like I said, I don't think that anyone's going to do well except for those, or I think the people who are going to do well are the people that are currently active military, because they're currently preparing for it. They're currently, they're in a state of preparing for it to some extent. They're not in, there's, I'd expect that there's a difference between, all right, I'm active military versus active duty versus, somewhere in between, where, prepping for active duty. So, and I guess there's various types of preparation for active duty, because, I guess we're technically not at war anymore.
Technically, yeah.
Or we're currently, I don't know if I don't know if the United States is still withdrawing. Anyway, the point being is that I think those are the folks that are going to have the most likely candidates to be successful in a situation like that. And, depending, it's like, well, presumably the majority of those folks will be on the, so at this point, it's like, okay, if there was a civil war, what's the civil war? I don't see. I don't know.
I'm not quite as pessimistic on my outlook as I was when I first mentioned it, but I still think the current political divide is really tough to see a bloodless escape from. I don't know that it would be as extreme as I felt like it would be previously. I've had time to kind of sit with those thoughts, and it was 4 or 5 episodes ago, I think, that we kind of touched on it. Might even have been a little bit longer at this point. I'm certainly not as pessimistic about it as I was.
Well, you say bloodless. There's already been 2 assassination attempts on former President Trump. So
yeah, that ear seems miraculously healed and not damaged.
I don't think that was a bullet that got, that wasn't a bullet that got his ear. I'm pretty sure it was glass that ricocheted.
Something. It
was not a bullet.
Sure, right? We could say that it's no longer bloodless anyway, but I don't know that I count that.
I don't count that as bloodless, but I'm saying it's like there have been 2 attempts that, the blood may come from Republicans trying to assassinate him. So And if an assassination attempt was, or if an assassination attempt was successful, um, that isn't gonna just, is that gonna just be a lot of noise, or is there gonna be further action behind that? That would concern me.
Just based on January 6th, I would say there would be action.
But see, January 6th was like quite a flaccid coup attempt.
Yes and no. I mean, there were enough people that for it to not be a organized coup, I think you could see the same type of surge in mobility from that same type of contingent that could theoretically sweep up more people because it's localized to where they are.
I can
Right?
see that.
It's different to have those people decide to go make the trip to Washington, D.C. and engage in that behavior as opposed to 3 or 4 people that you know in your neighborhood who are getting together to retaliate, and so you go join them because it's right here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason I think that would be more problematic than maybe people give credit for. But at the same time, they're also a lazy bunch of people in a lot of regards, right?
So, that's why I was thinking that I think most Americans wouldn't handle a civil war well. I think it's just we've gotten, and I include myself in this, but I'm like I'm relatively comfortable. There are things that I definitely think that need to be changed, but there's our founding fathers were intelligent enough to give us a change order process for the Constitution, and they immediately used it once the Constitution was written to demonstrate how to use it. So I think it all boils down to, and this is kind of what was displayed or portrayed in the movie, is that there is a significant number of corrupt individuals in at this point we can see all branches of the government, both parties. I say both parties because there's not I don't know that there's a strong, there's not a strong group of a third party, but I'm sure that if there was, there would be the same amount of corruption there. It's like at a point where it's like, do you get into one of those offices without being corrupt? Maybe in Congress, maybe in the Senate. It doesn't look like that in the Supreme Court or the Oval Office anymore.
Interesting choice of words, though. Just to play devil's advocate for a minute, is it corruption to achieve the office or corruption after attaining the office?
I think that you have to become. I think that you have to be corrupt, and I think there's a certain level of corruption that you have to be okay with to get into the office.
Being okay with it, though, you can pick that apart a little bit more. Like, what does being okay with it mean? Knowing that it exists in general, or actively being a part of it?
Something in between the two, in the sense of it's like maybe willing. Maybe I can think of a recent president who is absolutely just corrupt. Got there through corruption, was corrupt in office, still corrupt. And I can think of a president that I would expect, it's like the less he knew, the better. And it's like, it's kind of like one of those things. Is what we're doing legal? Yes. All right, that's good enough for me. I could see that being a thing, like considering like campaign donations and so forth. Are super PACs legal? Yeah. Are they a form of corruption? Maybe.
Yeah, I guess the main thought that I had was there, not in recent history at this point, but there have been a number of presidents who I'm not so sure I would say they were corrupt at the time of achieving the office, and maybe not even necessarily corrupt in and of themselves as much as they were aware of corruption within the executive branch, but weren't actively combating it.
I think that exists a fair amount everywhere, and then
Right.
and I think that's kind of the at best on the scale. And I think there are people that I think there are people there that are like, yes, there's corruption, and they want to fight corruption, but it's very difficult right now. I think there are a few people that are that way. Um, but if you look at everybody, you can find something. You look at someone long enough, you can find something wrong with them. So, I guess to think about it.
Just to bring it in, let he who is free of sin cast the first stone, kind of thing.
Fair, yeah. So, but I think it's like you might have someone who was not necessarily corrupt per se, but it's like, okay, the party that's backing them, the party that's driving them, they're corrupt. Like, they're decently corrupt. I think that exists.
I mean, at this point, as long as lobbyist groups exist, you have to
Yes.
kind of give that argument,
Yes.
credence. There is no state of existence where money can pour into interests and corruption not exist.
Yep. So that's kind of, like I said, that's another spot where it's like, okay, this is the bare, this is the least worst of these, and there's not anything really better than that. Anyway, it's a good movie. It's one that you can watch with the whole family that are over 18. I say that because so here's the thing. Okay, so it's changing gears almost completely. It was a movie that you can there's a decent amount of war depiction. I think it's fairly well done. I think since Saving Private Ryan, everything, or I don't want to say everything because I haven't seen everything and I don't know, but the only I gotta back up a little. So we use Saving Private Ryan as a measure because I haven't been to war. I haven't been in I haven't done anything relative. The worst the worst I've heard is I've been in a bad neighborhood and I've heard gunshots go off in the distance. That's it, and that's the extent of my exposure to I guess firearms being shot openly. So, so I don't know what a war zone is like, but I'm sure you remember this, but after the movie Saving Private Ryan came out, all of these veterans who had been in war, went to war, whether it was World War II veterans or the Korean War veterans or Vietnam vets. So many said this is the first accurate depiction of what war what war was like. And so I say all of that because it was a decent depiction of war scenes. I do know that the production they used full blanks instead of half or quarter blanks just to have the get the full effect of machine guns being fired and so forth. But there wasn't any, they showed something, there was some amount of I guess war images, you could say. But nothing was gratuitous, and it was it was something. It was a movie that Beck and I ended up watching. It was one that we watched together, and the thing that was really really interesting about it was that she was like, "This is the first war movie that I've ever liked," and she's like, "I really like it," and she's like, "The reason I think that I like it is because the main character is a woman, and this is the first war movie that I've ever seen where I can actually relate in the movie."
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was just like, and then I was like, that's probably why you don't like any westerns at all, except for True Grit, because there's a woman in the movie, and the thing about it was, it's like in these movies, it's like there's a lot of movies that portray strong women, and they have to be strong 100% of the time for it to be, I don't know. And I would say in this movie, they portrayed strong women, but they also portrayed their weak, their humanity, and the moments where somebody might have broken down. That was portrayed, and they did a good job of portraying a strong woman who's also a human, and has human responses to tragedy. And so it was really interesting to hear that sort of, oh, this movie was really interesting to me in this way, because it had nothing to do with the story or the politics. It's just that an excellent depiction of strong women, strong female lead characters.
Not that I don't have anything to follow that up with. I was just trying to think through. I'm not sure there's any other any war based film anyway that I can think of that has a similar like casting component.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that even so, if you go, historically, women haven't been allowed to go to war that often. Um, Stories about women that fought for the Russian military in World War II are relatively suppressed in the West.
And I was thinking about it's relatively recent that women could serve in combat roles,
Right.
in frontline roles in the U.S. military, and just thinking about post even that, like the only things that come to mind still aren't surrounding the women in the military at all. Like the closest I can think of is just like Sicario, but that was I think she was CIA.
Yeah, I haven't seen Sicario, and I don't want to. I would say CIA doesn't count as military.
Correct, and that's
Kind
why
of.
I was checking, just racking my head for anything that was even close.
Yeah.
I can't think of one.
I was, if you're going to use that as an example, you could say Jessica Chastain's character in Zero Dark 30. But again, not military. She was not military. She was CIA. She was in one of the. I guess I would expect CIA. The only thing that I can think of is Starship Troopers, and that's not a really good example. Because Starship Trooper they do have women in active combat. They have military soldier women that are soldiers in combat. But prior to pretty recently, you kind of just had if you're a woman and you were going to be in a near a combat zone, it was probably because you were a nurse.
Right, like Pearl Harbor.
MASH.
Yeah.
So all that being said, it was a great, good movie, good story. And I enjoyed it a lot. There were scenes that made me very tense. I didn't know what was going to happen. Fantastic. The characters were all fantastic. It was just a really well done movie, and I recommend it.
I remember when I heard about it, I added it to the list of movies to watch. I didn't realize it had hit Netflix already, though. So
I think it was like this week or last week that it hit. So
yeah, we're currently in a cycle where I have Netflix.
yeah, I was gonna say while you have it, it's definitely worth the hour and 49 minutes that it. But that was kind of all I had to say about that. And if I say any more, I'm afraid I'll give away spoilers.
Thinking back to like one of the other comments, just semi-related, was Band of Brothers before or after Saving Private Ryan? Do you remember?
After.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was what they did. I guess they. I know it was a Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks project, but they were, I think, less hands-on. Because I don't know that I don't think either of them directed anything. I don't know that anyone wrote anything, but they definitely funded it and produced it. I would even expect they were executive producers on it.
Because I was thinking that Saving Private Ryan was what greenlit Band of Brothers.
Oh, for sure. I think the success of Saving Private Ryan is what allowed Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg to do Band of Brothers, The Pacific. There were some other things they did. I know that there was actually I don't know to what extent, but there's a relatively like maybe 4-year-old movie with Tom Hanks, World War II movie where he's the captain of a battleship. So, yeah, definitely.
I vaguely remember references to that one.
Band of Brothers definitely greenlit. Sorry, Saving Private Ryan definitely greenlit Band of Brothers, which both of those fantastic, just fantastic. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.